Are hospitals supposed to be haunted? I don't know. But this one is, and I'm gonna show you 3 scary reasons why. These are the scariest places in the world. Abandoned hospitals are like the scariest places in the world. This one was built in 1910 and closed in the late 90s. And as soon as we walked in, strange things started happening. First, we heard what sounded like screams in the walls. Then we saw what looked like a ghostly figure of an old man sitting at the end of the bed. The scariest part, though, is when we turned the equipment back on and it started running by itself. Hospitals are already creepy places, especially when they're abandoned and full of deadly viruses. But this one is extra haunted. The scariest part, though, is when we turned the equipment back on and it started running by itself. When you walk through the door, there are 2 operating rooms to your left, and straight ahead is an elevator. Straight down the hall is the pharmacy, which is filled with hundreds of old bottles of medicine. As you can see, some of them are still full. That's definitely not right. We continued down the hall and into the basement, where we found a room full of old X-ray machines. These are the things that really creep me out because you never know who or what S is on them. As we were walking through, I started hearing strange noises coming from the room next door. At first, it sounded like someone screaming, and then it sounded like footsteps. I didn't want to investigate because I didn't want to find out what or who was in there. But this place gets even creepier. In another room, we found what looked like a small, shriveled-up old man sitting on the end of a bed. It was so scary that I didn't even stop to take a picture. I just ran out of the room. I don't know if he was a patient or a doctor, but he looked very mean. Like, does anyone know how long he's been sitting there for? How did he get there? Why is he watching us? There are many theories about this hospital and its history. Some say it's haunted by patients and doctors who died inside, while others say it is home to a malevolent spirit that feeds off the fear of those who enter. I don't know what's true, but I do know that this place is seriously haunted, and it gets even creepier inside. What's your favorite part? Let me know in the comments below. In the operating room, we found a bunch of old medical equipment, including a lamp that looked like it was from an alien planet. The scariest part, though, is when we turned it on and it started running by itself. It was then that we realized this place isn't safe. We should have never come here in the first place, but we couldn't leave now. We had to find out what happened to the last people who worked here. The hospital was abandoned in the late 90s, but it looks like it was just closed yesterday. That's how well preserved it is. There are computers and papers all over the place. The most disturbing thing, though, is that there are still body bags in the basement. They're filled with what looks like human remains. I don't want to touch them, but I also want to know what's inside. This place is truly terrifying, and I wouldn't be surprised if it's haunted. The scariest part, though, is when we turned the equipment back on and it started running by itself. we found a staff member's coat hanging in the back. It was so realistic that I almost thought it was a mannequin, but it wasn't. It was a real person's coat. And the scariest part, it still had their name tag on. It said Billie Eilish, but that couldn't be right. The singer was only 12 years old when the hospital closed. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. We found a room with a bunch of old medical equipment in it. The scariest part, though, is when we turned the equipment back on and it started running by itself. The scariest part, though, is when we turned the equipment back on and it started running by itself. This place is totally haunted, and I'm never coming back here again. But before we go, let's take one last look around. The scariest part, though, is when we turned the equipment back on and it started running by itself. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below.